Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with some more esoterica. Today we are diving back into the works of Eliphas Levi. This is Dogma and Ritual. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points brought to light by the text. It is not the format for everyone, but people do find value in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above, in the box down below, along with the original source material and the link for my book, so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. With that being said, we are going to dive in and continue our exploration with Chapter 1, The Candidate. Disciplina en sauveté. When a philosopher adopted as the basis for a new apocalypse of human wisdom the axiom, I think, therefore I am, in a measure, he unconsciously altered, from the standpoint of Christian revelation, the old conception of the Supreme Being. I am that I am, said the being of beings of Moses. I am he who thinks, says the man of Descartes, and to think being to speak inwardly. And to think being to speak inwardly. This man may affirm, like the God of St. John the Evangelist, I am he, in whom and by whom the word manifest, in principio erat verbum. Yes, the I am statement is extremely important. It is literally how Genesis begins. In the beginning there was nothing. It was formless and void. And then God spoke and said, I am the light, and became the light, and it was good. And that is how it reads. It's not, and he created. It is, I am. That is how he created it. He literally became the Logos, right? If you were just tuning in today, the Logos has never been a person, ever, in the entire history of ever. It is within you. It's just as the same as it is within me, but it is not any particular person. Before the beginning, there was God, and he was formless and without shape and infinite. And then he limited himself. He became non-infinite by becoming creation. He is literally all of creation at the exact same time. When he became limited from the infinite into the finite, that moment, that one pristine snapshot of a second, everything is created but nothing is in motion. That was the beginning, right? God became the beginning by becoming all things, which is the Spirit, right? God is the infinite. Spirit is God limited into creation. In order to set the creation into motion and to make all of the water molecules in the earth form, he spoke and he said, I am. He said, I am the light. And that was the Logos. That was the word of creation. Setting everything into motion. All of the molecules are now combining. We are getting planets and stars, and all of those things are because of the word. It is not a person. It is literally all things in motion at the same time, and therefore it cannot ever be a single person, ever. You can represent it, but you are not the representative of it. Back to the text. Now, what is a principle? It is a groundwork of speech. It is a reason for the existence of the word. The essence of the word is in the principle. The principle is that which is. Intelligence is a principle which speaks. That's not a good explanation. What further is intellectual light? It is speech. No, it is thought. Speech is how you relay your intellectual light. Right? Your soul, the part that resides inside of the 5D navigation device that is the temple of God, right? That soul thinks. You create the words, but you don't actually speak them. The Logos speaks them for you, right? In the exact same way that when you decide to wiggle your fingers, it's not your soul that makes the fingers wiggle. It's the soul that decides that the fingers wiggle, and then the Spirit sends out an electrical charge to your fingers to make them wiggle. It's the same with speech. You decide to say the thing, but it is the Spirit that actually makes the air move, the vocal cords vibrate, for the words to come out of your mouth, right? It is not, the speech is not the intellectual light. It is merely the reflection of that light. The intellectual light is the thoughts. It is the individualized spark of divinity, which is you, inside of the meat suit, the 5D navigational device, which is the temple of God. And so, when I said the principle is that which is, intelligence is a principle which speaks, not really. Right? It is the reflection of that principle, possibly, but even then, you don't necessarily have to be principled to speak. What is revelation? It is also speech. Not necessarily. You can be revealed to inside your mind. That has happened to me several times. I got a whole book where I wrote about several of those instances happening. Right? It was within me. It was not a speech. Right? Revelation is not speech. Right? It can be, but in order for it to be, it already has to be revealed internally to someone first. Right? You can't make the discovery that water and water and oxygen combine to create water. Oxygen and hydrogen, wow, it's a rough day. Oxygen and hydrogen create water, right? But that is a revelation. But in order for it to be relayed from me to you, somebody had to see it, recognize it, and understand it first. That's the revelation. Then they can relay it. So it is not speech. Speech is merely the means by which it is relayed. It is the way in which it is reflected, but it is not the thing itself. That is important. Being is the principle, speech is the means, and the plenitude or development and perfection of being is the end. Kind of, right? Again, you don't have to speak. You can do manifestation without ever saying a single word. It is more effective if you can speak aloud, but some people can't. Some people have vocal disabilities, and they can still manifest. It doesn't have to be spoken aloud. It's merely easier that way. There's a lot of things like that, right? This is saying that being is the principle, and that I agree with. You, being here, is the principle, right? You, the individualized spark of divinity which resides in the meat suit, right? That is the principle. That is what is the revelations come to. Speech is the way that it is relayed, but it is not the only way that it is relayed. And it can be a means, but to say that it is the means is an overstep. It is shoving into a box something that doesn't necessarily fill the box on its own. Right? You can write it down. That is not speech. Right? Speech is important. Speaking things aloud is important. The I am statements, important. But you can do those in your mind. You don't have to speak them aloud. To speak is to create. That is true, but it is, again, not the only way of creation. But to say, I think, therefore I exist, is to argue from consequence to principle, and certain contradictions which have been adduced by a great writer, Lamanius, have abundantly proved the philosophical imperfection of this method. I'm not aware of the Lamanius arguments. I have made my argument against it here. I am, therefore, something exists, would appear to us a more primitive and simple foundation for experimental philosophy. I am, therefore, being exists, ergo sum qui sum. Such is the first revelation of God in man and of man in the world, why it is also the first axiom of occult philosophy. Being is being. Hence, this philosophy, having that which is for its principle, is in no sense hypotheses or guesswork. Mercurius Trismegistus begins his admirable symbol, known under the name of the Emerald Table, by this threefold affirmation. Now, it is important to note that we do not have an actual emerald tablet. It is used as a source material in various of these esoteric works, and yet there is no physical emerald tablet that anybody has ever had their hands upon. Now, it may have existed and been hidden away by the Vatican. That is entirely a possibility, or it could be hidden in the Smithsonian. That is, again, another entire possibility. Or various other clubs which like to obscure reality. And so it may exist. We do not have any proof whatsoever that it actually does. And again, that's important, right? And because, right, we have done the Hermes, not all of the works of Hermes, obviously, but Several of them, significant amount, it's part of the Ancient Lore playlist, it's part of the Esoterica playlist, it may even be on Infinite Integrations. And some of the things contained in the Emerald Tablet are patently untrue. I'm not going to get into the details here. You can dig them up. If it comes up again, we will talk about it. It is true. It is certain without error. It is all truth. Thus, in physics, the true confirmed by experience. In philosophy, certitude purged from any alloy of error. In the domain of religion or the infinite, absolute truth indicated by analogy. Such are the first necessities of true science, and magic only can impart these to its adepts. But you, before all things, who are you? Thus, taking this work into your hands and proposing to read it. On the pediment of a temple consecrated by antiquity to the God of light was an inscription of 2 words, Know thyself. I impress the same counsel on every man when he seeks to approach science. Magic, which the men of old denominated the Sanctum Regnum, the Holy Kingdom or Kingdom of God, Regnum Dei, exists only for kings and priests. Are you priests? Are you kings? The priesthood of magic is not a vulgar priesthood, and its royalty enters not into competition with the princes of this world. The monarchs of science are the priests of truth, and their sovereignty is hidden from the multitude like their prayers and sacrifices. The kings of science are men who know the truth, and the truth is made free, according to the specific promise given by the most mighty of the initiators. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time reading today, apparently. The man who is enslaved by his passions or worldly prejudices can in no wise be initiated. He must alter, or he will never attain. Hence he cannot be an adept, for the word signifies a person who has attained by will and by work. Not necessarily. The man who loves his own opinions and fears to part with them, who suspects new truths, who is unprepared to doubt everything rather than admit anything on chance, should close this book or this video. For him, it is useless and dangerous. He will fail to understand it, and it will trouble him, while if he should divine its meaning, it will be a still greater source of disquietude. If you hold by anything in the world more than by reason, truth, and justice, if your will be uncertain and vacillating, either in good or evil, if logic alarm you, or the naked truth make you blush, if you are hurt when accepted ever errors are assailed, condemn this work straight away. Do not read it. Let it cease to exist for you, but at the same time, do not cry it down as dangerous. And I'm going to take a minute just to point out the fact that Mr. Levi left. Right? He turned away. He closed the book. He went back to where he came from. And so, take things with grains of salt. Apparently, it did not work for him. The secrets which it records will be understood by an elect few, and will be held back by those who understand them. Show light to the birds of the nighttime, and you hide their light. It is the light which blinds them, and for them is more dark than the darkness. I shall therefore speak clearly and make known everything, with the firm conviction that initiates alone, or those who deserve initiation, will read all and understand in part. There is a true and a false science, a divine magic and an infernal magic. In other words, one which is delusive and darksome. It is our task to reveal the one and unveil the other, to distinguish the magician from the sorcerer and the adept from the charlatan. The magician avails himself of a force which he knows. The sorcerer seeks to abuse a force which he does not understand. If it be possible in a scientific work to employ a term so vulgar and so discredited, then the devil gives himself to the magician, and the sorcerer gives himself to the devil. The magician is the sovereign pontiff of nature. The sorcerer is her profaner only. The sorcerer bears the same relation to the magician that a superstitious and fanatical person bears to a truly religious man. Before advancing further, let us tersely define magic. Magic is the traditional science of the secrets of nature, which has been transmitted to us from the Magi. By means of the science, the adept becomes invested with a species of relative omnipotence that can operate superhumanly. That is, after a manner which transcends the normal possibility of men. Thereby, many celebrated hierophants, such as Mercurius Trismegistus, Osiris, Orpheus, Apollonius of Tyana, and others whom it might be dangerous or unwise to name, came after their death to be adored and invoked as gods. Thereby, others also, according to the ebb and flow of opinion which is responsible for the caprices of success, became emissaries of Infernus, or suspected adventurers, like the Emperor Julian, Apuleius, the enchanter Merlin, and that arch-sorcerer, as he was termed in his day, the illustrious and unfortunate Cornelius Agrippa. To attain the sanctum regnum, in other words, the knowledge and power of the Magi, there are 4 indispensable conditions. An intelligence, illuminated by study. I agree with that. The intrepidity, which nothing can check. Kind of. A will which nothing can break. Yeah. And a discretion which nothing can corrupt and nothing intoxicate. That's true. Alright, so an intrepidity which nothing can check implies that you are going to be correct every time. And that is an impossibility, right? You should always, while you should absolutely have an intelligence illuminated by study, you should undertake no magical endeavor unless you are sure what your motivations are, not just your surface level ones, but your deep ones. You need to acknowledge them to ensure that it is not going to affect anyone in a negative manner. Those are important things. And if you are not willing to admit that it is a possibility that what is good for you is bad for someone else, you should not be doing this. An intrepidity which nothing can check means that you are going to do it regardless of whether or not you're getting any signals, right? That is not what you need to do. Right? You should be exceedingly cautious when you are doing any of these works because there are reverberations. The 8 laws of creation absolutely come into play. And so you should be intrepid, you should be brave, you should be ready to do the thing. But you should still know that there is a possibility it will not work if it is not aligned for the betterment of you. If it does work and it is not aligned for the betterment of you, it is because you have an intrepidity which nothing can check. Right? A will which nothing can break. You should always be able to be broken by the divine. That is important. To know, to dare, to will, to keep silence. And again, that keep silence is going to be a trouble for me. Such are the 4 words of the Magus, inscribed upon the 4 symbolical forms of the Sphinx. These 4 words can be combined after 4 manners and explained 4 times by one another. Footnote. See the tarot cards. That is interesting. Alright. 4 words inscribed upon the 4 symbolical forms of the Sphinx. The 4 words can be combined after 4 manners and explained 4 times by one another. So you have 78 tarot cards. Right? There are 22 major arcana, 56 minor. That is an awful lot of the math don't work right now. I have done a video, right? The very first tarot video that I did was the Fool's Journey and how you can achieve mastery through the tarot. And you can separate the tarot into the 4 suits, right? There are 14 cards per suit, which is 2 courses of 7. Now, if you add the Fool to that, which is an absolute thing, there's a reason why it has the 0 attached to it. The Fool represents you upon the journey. There is a very specific path that you can take. You take the first 7, right, with the 8 being the Fool, and it gives you the beginning stage of each one of the things, right? Pentacles is about earth. It is about attaining the worldly things. It is about your job. It is about security. It is about planting crops and things along that nature, right? The first 7 is the understanding of these things to happen. The next 7 is about the mastery thereof, right? From 8 to the king is about making the new choices with the knowledge that you have attained from the first 7 cards. You can overlay on top of that second 8, 7 of the major arcana, and they give a little bit more context. Now, it is entirely possible, I have not explored this, that you can change that context, right? You can take, instead of the first 7 being the pentacles, maybe you assign the second 7. So 8 through 14 of the major arcana equals up with 8 through 14 of the minor, depending on what suit you're using. And in that case, there would be 4 combinations, 4 manners, right? But that's the only way that that's going to work, is if you actually look at the thing that I talked about. As far as I am aware, that is the only way you're going to be able to do that. It's possible, again, that's not something that I've looked into. I looked at that, right? The way that the tarot was revealed to me. That was an internal thing, like we just talked about, right? Divine revelation. It's not something that I was even aware anyone had looked at prior in the same manner. I saw it and it was like, it clicked for me in the way that the MBTI stuff did, in the way that the magic did. Like, all of these things were an internal revelation. And it is entirely possible that this particular part could absolutely have to do with it. And if that interests you, I've got a whole, I think 3 videos for the first one, and then I got another video I just did on tarot with the standard definition. So if you're interested, it is definitely part of the Esoterica playlist. On the first page of the Book of Hermes, the adept is depicted with a large hat, which, if turned down, would conceal his entire head. One hand is extended towards heaven, which he seems to command with his rod, while the other is placed upon his breast. Before him are the chief symbols or instruments of science, and he has others hidden in a juggler's wallet. His body and arms form the letter Aleph, the first of the alphabet which the Jews have borrowed from the Egyptians. To this symbol we have occasion to recur later on. I'm going to see if I can pull this up for you, because I know what they're talking about. That should be... oh wait, I got to close this out real quick. Bam. This is the card that he's talking about here, right? The first page of the Book of Hermes is apparently the tarot, right? You have the magician. One hand is towards heaven, and he seems to command with his rod. He has a rod in the hand that is towards heaven. The other is placed upon his breast. Well, that doesn't fit. Before him are the chief symbols or instruments of science. He has others hidden in a juggler's wallet. You can see the instruments here before him. That's what made me think about it, right? One hand extended towards heaven, the instruments before him. He has all of the things. His arms make... like, it seemed to fit, but maybe it doesn't. Right? No, now, it is important to bear in mind that the guy who did the biographical introduction to this particular study is the guy that did the tarot, right? He came up with these designs. It is White. Smith was the lady that actually did the pictures, right? She actually made them under the direction of White. And so it's just something I wanted to point out, and maybe it doesn't fit as well as I thought, but it started to, and then again, hold on, I'll show you the other one, because this is the other one, right? And it kind of fits, right? He's got the purse, but he's not pointed to heaven. He doesn't have the rod. And so maybe it's just a matter that the artwork changed. All right. The Magus is truly what the Hebrew Kabbalists call the micro-prosperous, that is, the creator of the little world. The first of all magical sciences being the knowledge of one's own self. So one's own creation, first of all, works of science. It contains the others and is the principle of the great work. The term, however, requires explanation. Supreme reason being the sole, invariable, and consequently imperishable principle, what we term death being change. Hence, the intelligence which cleaves closely to this principle and, in a manner, identifies itself therewith, does hereby make itself unchangeable, and, as a result, immortal. To cleave invariably to reason, it will be understood that it is necessary to attain independence of all those forces which, by their fatal and inevitable movement, produce the alternatives to life and death. To know how to suffer, to forbear, and to die, such are the first secrets which place us beyond reach of affliction, the desires of the flesh, and the fear of annihilation. The man who seeks and finds a glorious death has faith in immortality and universal humanity, believes in it with him and for him, raising altars and statues to his memory in token of eternal life. Man becomes king of the brutes only by subduing or taming them. Otherwise, he will be their victim or slave. Brutes are the type of our passions. They are the instinctive forces of nature. The world is a field of battle where liberty struggles with inertia by the opposition of active force. Physical laws are millstones. If you cannot be the miller, you must be the grain. You are called to be king of the air, water, earth, and fire. But to reign over these four animals of symbolism, it is necessary to conquer and enchain them. He who aspires to be a sage and to know the great enigma of nature must be the heir and despoiler of the Sphinx. His, the human head, in order to possess speech. His, the eagle's wings, in order to scale the heights. His, the bull's flanks, in order to furrow the depths. His, the lion's talons, to make a way on the right and the left, before and behind. Because, the claws are the part that people are concerned with the lion. You, therefore, who seek initiation, are you as learned as Faust? Faust was not all that learned. He made a deal that he should not have done. Are you as insensible as Job? Job had senses. What are you talking about? Did you not read the book of Job? I read the book of Job. It does not say what most people think, but he absolutely had senses. He lamented. He cried. Right? He mourned. That is sensible. No, is it not so? But you may become equal to both, if you will. Have you overcome the vortices of vague thoughts? Are you without indecision or capriciousness? Do you consent to pleasure only when you will? And do you wish for it only when you should? No, is it not so? Now, this is talking about moderation, right? This is not talking about exclusion. That is an important thing that we talk about several times. There are vices and there are virtues, lust and chastity being one of each. You are meant to find the balance between them, right? You are meant to have sexual desire. It is part of life. It is meant for almost everyone. There is always an exception to the rule, but it is probably not you. You are meant to find a partner. You are meant to have a fulfilling life with a partner that you love, right? That is part of life. It doesn't happen for everyone, but it is supposed to. You are meant to find these things. If you're not finding it, it probably has more to do with you and your inability to accommodate than the other person, more likely. That's not casting anything upon you personally, right? But you should be in control of those desires, and those desires should not be in control of you. Too many people walking this path will tell you you shouldn't have sex, you should reserve yourself. That does not work. That is foolish. That is out of balance, and it is never going to work, right? Sooner or later, it will reverberate. You are denying yourself something which you should not be doing. It is the same for all 7 vices and all 7 virtues. You should not overtake of either of them, lust or chastity, greed or charity. None of them you should not overtake. You should find the balance. And so that I agree with. You should consent to pleasure only when you will. That does not mean never. That means when it's appropriate. That means don't be consumed by it. And I preach that all the time. Back to the text. Not invariably at least, but it may become so if you choose. The Sphinx has not only a man's head, it has a woman's breasts. Do you know how to resist feminine charms? No, is it not so? And you laugh outright in replying, vaunting your moral weakness for the glorification of your physical and vital force. And this lends itself more towards Oh, the aesthetics, right? Do you know how to resist? And yes, in part, that is the first one, right? But vaunting your moral weakness, right? It's not a moral weakness to have feminine charms appeal to you, right? That is kind of how you were created, so that it would. And unless there was some trauma, again, we're not going to dive into that. But vaunting your moral weakness, then that can be, right? If you are throwing your penis into everything that moves, then yes, moral weakness. But if you are having consensual sex with a singular partner, or with, again, some very rare exceptions, multiple partners, that is an exceedingly rare exception, it is probably not you. It is not morally weak to do so, to be in an engaged, committed relationship. That is literally part of the reason you are here. And so, in part yes, in part no. Be it so. I allow you to render this homage to the ass of Stern, or Apuleius. The ass has its merit, I agree. It was consecrated to Priapus, as was the goat to the god of Mendes. But take it for what it is worth, and decide whether ass or man shall be master. He alone can possess, truly, the pleasure of love who has conquered the love of pleasure. To be able and to forbear is to be twice able. Woman, enchains you by your desires, master your desires, and you will enchain her. So women can't do magic. It can't be the other way around. Now, I know I'm being a little pedantic there, but keep in mind duality exists. There's masculine and feminine and everything, and that definitely includes magical works. The greatest injury that can be inflicted on a man is to call him a coward. That is not true. That is not true. You can break his leg. That is much more of an injury, right? Pride is one of those sins, right? There's pride and humbleness. That is the coin. And you should be proud of the things that you accomplish, and you should be humble in the things that you accomplish, finding that balance. Someone calling you a coward is hurting your pride, not your body. And so you should find the balance there. Maybe, possibly, you think. Maybe there's a little bit of balance to be stricken there, right? The greatest injury that can be inflicted on a man is to call him a coward. No, there's plenty more. We've done all kinds of horrible things to people. Take the Spanish Inquisition. I bet any one of those injuries is going to be more than calling someone a coward. Any one of them, the rack, the bull, any of them, right? All of the horrible things, flaying people alive. I bet that is a bit more of an injury, right? Peeling the skin off of someone alive, that's probably a greater injury than just calling him a coward. Back to the text. Now, what is a cowardly person? One who neglects his moral dignity in order to obey blindly the instincts of nature. As a fact, in the presence of danger, it is natural to be afraid and seek flight. Why, then, is it shameful? It is only shameful in some instances. There are absolutely times when you should not engage with physical activities. There are absolutely times that you should. Again, there's a balance to be stricken there, right? You shouldn't be acting out of unbridled anger, but there is righteous anger, and that is absolutely a thing that you should embrace, right? When things are not correct, you should be brave. But when it is irrelevant, there's no need. If someone calls you a coward, there's no need to fight, right? Who are you, Marty McFly? You trying to get in a car wreck, right? What's going on here? It is shameful, however, if you know that something is right, if you know where the moral line lies, and you don't stand on that line, that is definitely shameful. A greatest injury, I don't know about all that. You're definitely being a coward if you do it. But again, then you're not going to be condemned to hell for being a coward. You might for standing on the wrong side of lines, but then again, you would have to believe in hell for that, and I don't. So, back to the text. Because honor has erected into a law that we must prefer our duty to our inclinations or fears. What is honor from this point of view? It is universal presentience of immortality and appreciation of the means which can lead to it. You can be brave and not believe in the eternal life. People do that, right? Not everybody believes in eternity. Not everybody believes in God. Not everybody believes in salvation. But people are courageous regardless. They can still stand on that moral line, whether or not they believe in God. That is a possibility that many believers will not give you, right? Well, there's no morality outside of the New Testament. Wrong. Just flat on the face wrong. Morality has existed in other places than the Bible and has been verified by other sources than the Bible. And so it is not exclusive to it. And you don't have to know that there is immortality to stand for the right thing. Now, I believe in immortality, right? I believe that the soul is eternal, that we came from somewhere, that we're going to return to the exact same place. That's what I believe. And with the stands that you make here absolutely do make a difference, right? If you are on the wrong side of a moral line and you're making a stand there, then you might get some judgment for that. And I don't know how it's going to play out, but you're probably not doing life correctly. And I'm not going to tell you what those lines are, right? Those are for you to figure out. Back to the text. The last trophy which man can win from death is to triumph over the appetite for life, not by despair, but by more exalted hope, which is contained in faith, for all that is noble and honest, by the undivided consent of the world. Boy, if he'd have known how his life would have turned, I bet he would not have written those words, because once again, he turned from what he wrote in this book to something else. To learn self-conquest is therefore to learn life, and the austerities of Stoicism were no vain parade of freedom. Actually, they were exactly a vain parade. Who were the Stoics? The Stoics were a group of people who like to say, I am better than you because I do this thing, right? I am in control of my emotions. I don't feel sadness. I am better than you. I am in control of my appetites. I only eat bread. I am better than you. I am in control of my sexual desires. I never have sex. I am better than you. That is who they were, right? I am better than you because I don't let my emotions show. That is patently stupid. Straight off the top. There are great things to be taken from Stoicism, but we did Marcus Aurelius, and he was a little bit of a whiny ass. To yield to the forces of nature is to follow the stream of collective life and to be the slave of secondary causes. To resist and subdue nature is to make oneself a personal and imperishable life. It is to break free from the vicissitudes of life and death. Every man who is prepared to die rather than renounce truth and justice is most truly living, for immorality abides in his soul. To find or to form such men was the end of all ancient initiations. Pythagoras disciplined his pupils by silence and all kinds of self-denial. Candidates in Egypt were tried by the four elements, and we know these self-inflicted austerities of fakirs and Brahmins in India for attaining the kingdom of free will and divine independence. All macerations of asceticism are barred from the initiations of ancient mysteries. They have ceased because those qualified for initiation, no longer finding initiators, and the leaders of conscience becoming in the lapse of time as uninstructed as the vulgar. The blind have grown weary of following the blind, and no one has cared to pass through ordeals, the end of which was now only in doubt and despair, for the path of light was lost. To succeed in performing something, we must know what it is proposed to do, or at least must have faith in someone who does know it. But shall I stake my life on a venture, or follow someone at chance who himself knows not where he is going? We must not set out rashly along the path of the transcendent sciences, but once started, we must reach the end or perish. To doubt is to become a fool. To pause is to fall. To recoil is to cast oneself into an abyss. You, therefore, who are undertaking the study of this book, if you persevere with it to the close and understand it, it will make you either a monarch or a madman. It is important to note how his life ended up once again. Do what you will with the volume. You will be unable to despise or to forget it. If you are pure, it will be your light. If strong, your arm. If holy, your religion. If wise, the rule of your wisdom. But if you are wicked, for you, it will be an infernal torch. It will lacerate your breast like a poignard. It will rankle in your memory like a remorse. It will people your imagination with chimeras, and will drive you through folly to despair. You will endeavor to laugh at it, and will only gnash your teeth. This book will be the file in the fable which the serpent tried to bite, but it destroyed all his teeth. Now, let us now enter on the series of initiations. I have said that revelation is the word. As a fact, the word, or speech, is the veil of being and the characteristic sign of life. Every form is the veil of a word, because the idea, which is the mother of the word, is the sole reason for the existence of forms. That is exactly backwards, right? We get words because forms exist. We created words in order to describe or to convey the understanding of what a thing is, right? We came up with chair because of this thing we made to sit in. We come up with stool for the same reason. We came up with house to explain that this is the place where we live. We get the word from the form, not necessarily the form from the word. And so every form is the veil of a word, kind of, right? If you don't know what the thing is, there is a word that is veiled from you, and so yes, but also no, right? And I'm not even going to try and get any deeper in that, but that is a surface level, like it's a surface level understanding of something that does not nearly dig into the meat. Back to the text. Every figure is a character. Every character derives from and returns into a word. For this reason, the ancient sages, of whom Trismegistus is the organ, formulated their sole dogma in these terms. That which is above is like that which is below, and that which is below is like that which is above. There is definitely some things in this, right? The macrocosm and the microcosm are absolutely things. The things that are represented in the big are represented in the small, and the things that are represented in the small are represented in the big. The easiest way to understand that is the atom, right? The primal element, right? Take helium, 1, 1, and 1. It is one nucleus, which is one proton and one neutron, and it is one electron that goes around it. This isn't taking in isotopes and all of that. That is similar to how the planets, right? Now, it gets more complicated, and if you go up, we have, 9 planets here, so that's going to be, what is it, carbon maybe? I'm not even going to try. It's been so long since I had any functional use of the periodic table, but as the elements increase, so do the planets, right? And there is somewheres out there in existence a sun with a single planet rotating around it, and somewheres there is an element which has the nucleus being surrounded by 9 elements, right? That's what I'm getting to. It's not a one-for-one correlation because the nucleus contains more components than a singular sun, but not getting into astrophysics. What is above is indeed like what is below. That only carries so far, though. There are definitely correlations between the things that you see up there and the things that you see down here, but it's not a one-on-one correlation for any of them. There is an alternate, right? This is where I'm going with this. There is an alternate explanation for this. There are 7 internal human chakras. There is 1 external human chakra. You have, coming from the bottom up, the base, the sacral, and the solar plexus. That is the as-below trinity. You have the heart, and then you have another trinity. You have the throat, the third eye, and the crown. That is the as-above trinity. If you use the as-below trinity with the as-above trinity into the trinity of the as-below and the as-above, combined into the heart and projected out into the divine, that is how manifestation happens. The alignment of the bodily, here at the bottom, and the spiritual, here at the top, into the desire that is true here in the heart and project it out into the world, that's how manifestation happens. So when I see as above, like below, that is what I am thinking of. Now, I still look at the allegory of the sun and the atom, right? That is a true thing. And it is important to remember that there can be multiple explanations for things, and I believe that my explanation for this, for manifestation purposes, is more effective than most of the common interpretations for it. That's why I added it in here. Back to the text. In other words, the form is proportional to the idea. The shadow is the measure of the body calculated with its relation to the luminous ray. The scabbard is as deep as the sword is long, plus a little bit. The negation is in proportion to the contrary affirmation. Production is equal to destruction in the movement which preserves life. And there is no point in infinite space which may not be regarded as the center of a circle having an extending circumference, indefinitely receding into space. Every individuality is, therefore, indefinitely perfectible, since the moral order is analogous to the physical, and since we cannot conceive any point as unable to dilate, increase, and radiate in philosophically infinite circle. What can be affirmed of the soul in its totality may be affirmed of each faculty of the soul. The intelligence and will of man are instruments of incalculable power and capacity, but intelligence and will possess, as their helpmate and instrument, a faculty which is too imperfectly known, the omnipotence of which belongs exclusively to the domain of magic. I speak of the imagination, which the Kabbalists term the diaphane or the translucid. Imagination, in effect, is like the soul's eye. Therein forms are outlined and preserved. Thereby we behold the reflections of the invisible world. It is the glass of visions and the apparatus of magical life. By its intervention, we heal diseases, modify the seasons, drive death away from the living, and raise the dead to life, because it is the imagination which exalts the will and gives it a hold upon the universal agent. I want to take a moment and point out that this is imagination and the soul's eye do not necessarily correlate to visible things. Right? If you were unaware, right? If you haven't watched the introduction where I talked about this before, I have aphantasia. I cannot close my eyes and visualize anything. I can't see a blade of grass. I can't see a box. I can't do a house. Like, I can look at these glasses right here, close my eyes and try to imagine them, and it does not happen. I can now, through the procedures that I do, I am healing that, and I have been able recently to be able to see colors. For the first time in my life, I just turned 48 years old. For 47 of those years, solid, I could not imagine even colors. Right? Now I can, through the healing processes of the things that I am putting into effect. So when I tell you that you can use the soul's eye to visualize, most people do, but it is not a requirement. I have been able to do these things, right? I have taken control of the apparatus of magical life. I have healed myself. I have modified the seasons. And if you were unaware, when I got injured, it was a direct result of me playing with the weather. Right? There was a hurricane in the Gulf, and I was like, let me see if I can dissipate it. And I did. It happened. It went, and I was like, all right, maybe that was a coincidence. Let me see if I can reform it. And I did. And it happened. And then I had to go to work in it. And when I went to work in it, I wound up getting injured. That was a direct repercussion from me playing with the forces. Right? You can do things. You should be exceedingly careful in the things that you do. It's one of the reasons why I put so many warnings in my book. You don't have to be able to see anything for this. Now, driving death away from the living, I don't play with that. Raise the dead to life, again, I do not play with that. But because it is the imagination, which is your will focused, right? You don't have to be able to see it to be able to focus your will in that way. The focusing of the will is what makes the difference, not necessarily the seeing of the thing you want to come from that. And I am a testament to that, because I have done it without the ability to do it. Back to the text. Imagination determines the shape of the child in its mother's womb and decides the destiny of men. Whoa. Yeah, buddy, let's pop up on that. So what you're telling me is that unconsciously, I'm sure, people are wanting their children to have Downs. Now, I love Downs kids. And I have a special place for special needs. I grew up with a Downs kid as a neighbor, a friend of the family. Downs people are great, but there's nobody on the planet who wanted that in their life. Right? There is not a single parent on the planet, even if they accept it, even if they love their child to no end, who asked for that. Not a single person on the planet imagined, you know what, I want the shape of my child to have an extra chroming. That did not happen, ever. In the history of ever. Nobody has ever said that. But it still happens. So, imagination may not necessarily determine the shape of the child in the mother's womb. Maybe. Possibly. Maybe there's another force there. It lends wings to contagion and directs the weapons of warfare. Are you exposed in battle? Believe yourself to be invulnerable, like Achilles, and you will be so, says Paracelsus. How did that work out for Achilles? How did that work out for Achilles? Now, we're pulling myth and fable into it, so okay, whatever. There are times when this is an absolute truth. There are times when this will absolutely kill you. Be exceedingly discerning in your use of this. Right? You should be confident, once again. You should be humble, once again. Fear attracts bullets, but they are repelled by courage. Do I have to say anything to that? I am in a position where I live my life to the extent where bullets are not a concern for me. Right? I have no fear that I am going to be randomly shot. It's possible, but I don't live in fear of that. If someone is shooting, I'm not going to say that my courage is going to keep me from getting shot. I work miracles. I have healed myself on at least 3 different ways. I would not attempt that. It is well known that persons with amputated limbs feel pain in the very members which they possess no longer. That is true. Nerves are things. Paracelsus operated upon living blood by medicating the product of a bleeding. He cured headache at a distance by treating hair cut from the patient. By the science of the imaginary unity and solidarity of all parts of the body, he anticipated and outstripped all the theories, or rather all the experiences, of our most celebrated magnetizers. Hence, his cures were miraculous, and to his name of Philip Theophrastus Bombast, he deserved the addition of Aurelius Paracelsus, with the further epithet of divine. No. Imagination is the instrument of the adaptation of the word. Imagination applied to reason is genius. Not necessarily. Reason is one, as genius is one, in the multiplicity of its works. There is one principle, there is one truth, there is one reason, there is one absolute and universal philosophy. Whatever is, subsists in unity, considered as beginning, and returns into unity, considered as end. One is in one. That is to say, all is in all. That is true. Unity is the principle of numbers. Like, all is, the spirit is quite literally every existing atom ever. All the hydrogen, all the way up through the entirety of the periodic table. Every single one of those elements in existence ever is the spirit. And so, yes, it is all one. We are only separated by the relativity of ourselves. The exact same things make up me as make up you, as make up the air around me. The only individualization is ourselves. And so, we are only distinct in our differentiation into our meat suit. It subsists in unity, considered as beginning, and returns into unity, considered as end. One is in one. That is to say, all is in all. Unity is the principle of numbers. It is also the principle of motion and, consequently, of life. The entire human body is summed up in the unity of a single organ, which is the brain. No. Oh, there are other parts. All religions are summed up in the unity of a single dogma, which is the affirmation of being and its equality with itself, which constitutes its mathematical value. The affirmation of being and its equality with itself, which constitutes its mathematical value. That is trying to put something there that is not necessarily there. There is only one dogma in magic, and it is this. The visible is the manifestation of the invisible, or, in other terms, the perfect word, in things appreciable and visible, bears an exact proportion to the things which are inappreciable by our senses and unseen by our eyes. The Magus lifts one hand towards heaven and points down the other to earth, and says, above immensity, below immensity still, immensity equals immensity. This is true in things seen as in things unseen. The first letter in the alphabet of the sacred language, Aleph, represents a man extending one hand towards heaven and the other to earth. So, that is the image I showed of the magician in the tarot, and it's not with him having his hand over his heart. Inconsistency, often within the same chapter. Way to repeat the Bible. It is an expression of the active principle in everything. It is the creation in heaven corresponding to the omnipotence of the word below. This letter is a pentacle in itself, that is, a character expressing the universal science. It is supplementary to the sacred signs of the macrocosm and the microcosm. It explains the Masonic double triangle and the five-pointed blazing star. For the Word is one and the revelation is one. By endowing man with reason, God gave him speech. Those two are not necessarily linked. And revelation, manifold in its forms, but one in its principle, consists entirely in the universal Word. That is true. The interpreter of the absolute reason. This is the significance of that term so much misconstrued, Catholicity, which in modern hieratic language means infallibility. The universal in reason is the absolute, and the absolute is the infallible. If absolute reason impelled universal society to believe irresistibly the utterance of a child, that child would be infallible by the ordination of God and of all humanity. Faith is nothing else but reasonable confidence in this unity of reason and in this universality of the Word. To believe is to place confidence in that which we as yet do not know, when reason assures us beforehand of ultimately knowing or at least recognizing it. Absurd are these so-called philosophers who cry, I would never believe in a thing which I do not know. Shallow reasoners, if you knew, would you need to believe? You can believe in all kinds of things. You can believe in things that are not true. That is definitely a possibility. You can place your faith into something which is verifiably untrue. Again, see the Bible study. And so, you should not believe in things which you are not willing to verify, right? And you should not believe that just because someone else told you something, that it is a truth. Ever. Right? You should always verify anything. Now, there are exceptions, right? You can say that the sky is blue. I don't need to go and verify that. You can say that there are clouds. I don't need to verify that. But if you try to tell me that the clouds are made of sulfur, then we're going to need some verification. But once upon a time, right, if you try to tell me that there is some guy sitting on a throne up in the sky waiting to condemn me to a pit of fire because I smoked a cigarette when I was 16 years old, then we're going to have a problem. There's going to be some verification issues. But people take that completely on faith. They take completely on faith and never read the source material to see whether or not there is actually a concept of hell contained in the book. There's not, right? At least in the Old Testament, there was no heaven, there was no hell at all. Well, that is a fundamental thing that you should investigate before you believe that there is this thing, right? So you should not always take anything on faith. Now, there are things that we are going to have to take on faith. Immortality, You can make your own decisions about that, right? I tell you all of the time, I can relay my experience, I can't give it to you. And the only reason I have the confidence that I do is because of the experience that I had, right? The spiritual experience that I cannot relay. So it remains speculative for you, not for me. Don't take me at my word. Verify anything that I tell you. Put it into practice. See if it actually works. And if it doesn't, let me know. I am perfectly willing to be corrected because I don't take everything on faith. I have faith. I believe in the afterlife. I believe in God. I just don't believe that man necessarily has the right answers, and myself included. That's why I tell you to verify. If you knew what you need to believe, that is narcissism. That is gaslighting. But must I believe on chance and apart from reason? Certainly not. Blind and haphazard belief is superstition and folly. We may believe in causes which reason compels us to admit on the evidence of effects known and appreciated by science. Science. Great word and great problem. What is science? We shall answer in the second chapter of this book. And that's going to bring us to the end of the initiate. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a somewhat difficult series of topics. I understand I have some unconventional beliefs, and I have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those. It is not intentional, but it is not something I apologize for. I am here to relay as clearly as I possibly can the things which I know. Now, those things I know are from direct revelation, and so you don't have to believe them. Take them with a grain of salt. Put them into practice. I tell you to pray, fast, and meditate. I don't tell you to go seek out somebody to initiate you. I tell you to take it to God and see what He tells you. Put the time in. Put the effort in to do the things that you already know you're supposed to be doing, and you will get the answer. That's how you verify it. I tell you how I have healed myself. Try it out. See if it works. If it does, that's wonderful. If it doesn't, then we got more work to do. But for me, it's worked. I have healed my throat. I have healed my shoulder. I have healed my back. I am healing my leg. It's working. Right? I have the fruits of the Spirit. I have a wife and children who love me. I am safe and secure in my home. I have the fruit. Do I have monetary wealth? No. Do I manifest monetary wealth? No. I am on the path that will lead to success, eventually, maybe. But I have truth that I have to disseminate, and whether or not there is financial remuneration from that, that's not up to me. I still have to give you the information. If those rewards come, that is fine, but I am not going to manifest those directly. I am not going to visualize money. It's just not going to happen. I'm going to visualize truth. I'm going to visualize healing. I'm going to visualize helping, because that's what I want in my life. I want to help people. I want to heal people. I want to give people the truth. I enjoy it. Now, sometimes that's going to be subjective. Sometimes it's going to be objective. And hopefully I'm at least a little bit decent at pointing out even my own confirmation bias when those points come up. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, a share, a follow. Throw me a comment. Whether you agree or disagree with anything that was stated, put it in the box down below. And if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If there is another work you would like to see me discuss in the manner that we are doing here, put that in the box as well. And if you really like what I'm doing, hit me with that super things. Consider joining for a membership or picking up a copy of my book. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Take. Peace.